But first, this breaking story for you overnight. Part one of the final report on the investigation into President-elect Donald Trump by former special counsel Jack Smith has been made public. It details his investigative findings in the federal 2020 election interference case. And it reads in part, quote, "The office assessed that the admissible evidence was sufficient to obtain and sustain a conviction at trial." In response to that report, Trump posted on Truth Social early this morning, calling it, quote, "fake findings." Joining me now to discuss this report is CBS News political reporter and attorney Katrina Kaufman. Katrina, the report seems crystal clear. I'm wondering what stands out to you most from Jack Smith.
Errol, it's really interesting to see this final report from Jack Smith. And one thing that stands out is the quote you mentioned, which is his confidence that had they gone to trial with this case, that Trump would have been convicted. And we have to remember that is on top of his other conviction in his New York criminal trial, where he was just sentenced and made a convicted felon entering this office. Some other things that stood out are we really got some insight into the thought process behind these charges, behind the case. For instance, Jack Smith talked about why they didn't bring the charge of insurrection, for example, which people had wondered. And he talked about how there was really no precedent for it. They were worried that with Trump being a sitting president at the time, that it wouldn't necessarily be successful. And they really wanted to make sure that the case they brought against Trump was going to be airtight. Another thing he mentioned was that in a letter to Merrick Garland that went with this, that this decision to prosecute Trump was his alone. And I think that's significant in the context of Trump saying that he is going to exact retribution on the people who have brought these cases against him.
And it's a fascinating read. Our viewers really should dive into it. Where do we stand with the other case that Smith was prosecuting?
So there is still the Florida classified documents case. Smith has dropped that against Donald Trump, although it's without prejudice, so it could be brought back later. But he's trying to reinstate the case in the 11th Circuit against Trump's co-defendants. And actually, he's turned this case over to the U.S. District Attorney of Miami. And there's also still going to be a hearing, actually, on Friday about the part of Smith's report related to that classified documents case, which they want to present as some top members of Congress, but Trump and his co-defendants are trying to block that.
All right, Katrina Kaufman, live for us from our D.C. bureau. Katrina, thank you.